The power of the gospel, why we should never be ashamed. In Romans 1 verses 16 to 17, Paul declares his confidence in the gospel. This passage is often called the heart of Romans because it introduces Paul's key argument. Salvation comes through faith alone. Romans 1 verses 16 to 17. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes, first to the Jew, then to the Gentile. For in the gospel the righteousness of God is revealed, a righteousness that is by faith from first to last, just as it is written, the righteous will live by faith. 1. I am not ashamed of the gospel. In Paul's time, the gospel was considered foolishness, 1 Corinthians 1 verse 18. The Roman world was filled with idolatry, immorality, and pride. Many people feared persecution for believing in Jesus. But Paul boldly declares, I am not ashamed. Are we sometimes ashamed of our faith? Do we hesitate to share Jesus at work, school, or with friends? Jesus warns in Mark 8 verse 38, whoever is ashamed of me, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them. Stand firm in the gospel no matter the cost. 2. The gospel is the power of God for salvation. The gospel isn't just good advice, it is God's power to save. It transforms lives not by human effort but by God's grace. The Apostle Paul was once a persecutor, but through the gospel, he became a preacher. We don't need to change people, God's power does that. Share the gospel boldly, trusting in God's power. The gospel can change anyone, even the most lost sinner. 3. Salvation to everyone who believes. The gospel is for all people, Jews and Gentiles alike. No one is too far gone for God's grace. Faith in Jesus is the only requirement for salvation. John 3 verse 16. We must never limit the gospel to certain people. It is for the rich, the poor, the weak, the strong, and every nation. God's love is for all. Are we sharing it with everyone? 4. The righteous shall live by faith. Paul quotes Habakkuk 2 verse 4, showing that salvation is by faith, not works. The Old Testament pointed to righteousness through faith, not the law. Many people try to earn salvation, but Romans teaches that faith alone saves. Are we trusting in our good works or in Jesus alone? Do we believe that we are righteous in Christ, or do we still carry guilt? Stop striving, trust in Jesus. The gospel is God's power, not ours. It saves everyone who believes, not based on works but faith. Paul was not ashamed, and neither should we be. Will you boldly share the gospel? Will you trust Jesus completely for salvation? Lord, give us boldness to proclaim your gospel and trust in your righteousness alone. Help us not be ashamed, but to stand firm in faith.